Lead attorney here. Hope you guys are doing well, man. Listen, they had to do it. They had to do it. What am I talking about? Oh, struggle streaming already. Listen, guys, can y'all hear me? Turn this damn thing. The Supreme Court of the United States has overturned Roe V Wade. Oh my God.
Welcome to Uncle Stu's neighborhood, where you will receive knowledge, understanding, wisdom, and humor. Now, let us welcome our uncle, Uncle Stu, the old man on the block.
All right, that looks a little bit better. So as I said, we're going to have a real deep conversation tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about politics. We're going to take a deep dive into this Roe versus Wade decision. We're going to talk about exactly why the thumbnail says the Supreme Court did it right, but I don't want to leave us there. I also want to have even a deep dive conversation as to what can we do now. And I'm very aware of the sensitivities of this conversation. I'm aware of the high emotions that surrounds this conversation. I'm aware of what a lot of women may be feeling, what a lot of women may be thinking. I'm aware of a lot of men that has platforms that might be sitting up here and cheering. I'm aware of some women that might be cheering, but I'm also aware of a lot of women that are upset, that are angry, that are mad. Whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, we all need a better, deeper understanding as to things that is going on. So let us right now really understand what is Uncle Stu talking about when he says that the Supreme Court decision on a federal level was correct. Our government, and I hope that y'all can see my little pointer here. Our government is divided into three separate things. We are divided by the legislative branch, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate. The legislative branch is set up, ladies and gentlemen, strictly to write laws. They deal with the U.S. Constitution and they deal with laws in order for us to understand writing laws. They are the ones that write the bills. They are also what they call the purse of the government, which means they are there to write the laws and they are there to distribute money. So when it comes to writing laws, there is only one body in the United States United States, that can write laws, and that is our legislative branch of government. Once the legislative branch writes the law, then it must go to the executive branch, which is our president. And the president is the only one that can execute the law. What do we mean by execute the law? It means he or she, whenever there's a she, he or she is the only one that can say, I am writing this law and I am signing an executive decision that this law is now going to be the law of the land. And therefore, this law will have federal penalties if this law is broken. Now, this is so that one branch of government can never dominate another branch of government, meaning the legislative branch could never dominate the executive branch, and the executive branch could never dominate the legislative branch. It's what we call equal powers. Now, What is the judicial branch set up to do? They are set up to adjudicate over the executive and legislative branch. What does that mean? What that simply means is that if the executive branch or if the president overreaches the legislative branch, the legislative part of our government can then go to the Supreme Court and have them adjudicate as to whether the president overreached his or her powers. The same thing if the legislative branch overreaches into the executive branch, the president can then go to the Supreme Court to see if the legislative branch overreached into the executive branch. Now, one of the things that has to be understood is that we also have what's known as federal and state. And you probably heard, if you haven't, we could talk about that for the moment. The power of the federal government over the states. Now, originally, when the Constitution was written and how the powers were, states had more rights than the federal government, meaning that based on whatever state you lived in was how that state governed itself, and that there was a limited power that the federal government had. But when did this federal over state argument begin? Two major times in our history. The first time we heard of these arguments of states' rights over the federal government was right before the Civil War. The southern states wanted the right to own slaves, where the northern states, also running in the federal government, wanted to abolish slavery. And the states that was in the South that wanted to abolish slavery rebelled. And because they rebelled, they felt that the federal government overreached. And because of this overreaching, we now have what was known as the Civil War. If you study history from a Southern perspective, they call it the Northern aggression. But if you studied it in areas of the North above the Mason-Dixon line, we called it the Civil War. Now, the second time we've seen this argument about states' rights versus the federal is during the Reconstruction era, when all of a sudden all these laws about Jim Crow started coming down. And the states felt they had the right to have these Jim Crow laws. And what ended up happening is that once again, the federal government stepped in and overruled the power of the states. But now we're here. And what happened? Those laws was based on the 14th Amendment. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But what was it about this Roe versus Wade case that made it overturned? In the 1970s, Roe versus Wade hit the Supreme Court. And when it hit the Supreme Court, they argued that this was the Supreme Court's right to say that abortion in the states or child deletions in the states was constitutional. The only problem with that argument is there's nothing written in the Constitution about the deletion of children. Nothing. Therefore, they had no legal precedent, no law in which to judge whether child deletions were legal in all 50 states. And although this law was precedent, the problem was it needed to be revisited. Why? Because this law that was never written was created. Remember, I said the judicial branch is only supposed to adjudicate laws, not write the law. And because the Supreme Court made a decision in the 70s, it overreached into the legislative branch of our government. Therefore, It was not supposed to be. And therefore, that had to be reversed and given back to states in order for the state to adjudicate and for the states to write the laws thereof. That is the most simplistic politics 101 that I can give you, because we could take deep dives all over American history, but I wanted to make it simple.